Hello everybody, my name is Mark Sineri from the Trumbull Nature and Art Center. Today I'm going to be talking to you about one of my very favorite topics, honeybees. I'd like to invite you to my home where I have several beehives and I'm getting ready to install 3 new packages of bees that I just picked up. Come along on my journey, hopefully it all goes well and you enjoy watching from home. So honeybees come shipped in a 3-pound package. Inside this package, a simple screen and wooden box, there are over 10,000 bees and 1 queen. These bees came from Georgia. They were sent up on a truck just a couple of days ago, and when they arrive in the northern states, we install them into a beehive. Right now, they're perfectly content inside their hive there. They're all surrounding the queen, and this particular type of bee is called an Italian honeybee. No doubt you've seen these buzzing around your garden before. There are many different varieties of honeybees. Italians are known for their docile disposition. What I'm going to do now is go through the steps of putting all of these bees into their new home. The lid is off, and on the inside, there's an upside down can. Hopefully you can see that. And that can is filled with sugar and water. And then this is a little flap that holds the queen inside her own separate cage. I'm going to carefully try to get her out. Without letting everybody else fly away. And in here is a little separate cage. And inside is the queen. If you look down this end, you'll see a little bit of white material. That's called a candy plug. So what we need to do is take a pin or a needle. I'm going to pull that piece of cork off of the end of this cage. I'm going to hang it up inside of one of the hives that are behind me, one of the hives that are in the white boxes. And then over the course of the next several days, the other bees will slowly eat their way through that candy plug, releasing the queen as if she was born within that hive. Because this hive isn't quite used to this new queen because she came from a farm. And we need to give them about a week to get to know each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the cork out. She seems to be in good condition. Pull the cork out. I won't need that. It's always a little hard doing this with gloves on. There we go. Hopefully you can see her in there. She's slightly bigger than her workers. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the lid off. And inside, there are lots of individual frames. We give them a rectangular wooden structure, and then the bees, using their wax, build out their comb. Inside the comb goes honey or pollen or perhaps eggs, lots of eggs that the queen will be laying to raise new bees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out 5 of these combs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what I'm going to carefully do is put the queen right here in between a couple of the frames, and I'm going to kind of squish her, not her, but I'm going to use one of the other frames to hold this little queen cage in place. I'm going to put her down slightly. There we go. Here's someone who's looking for her queen. And I'm going to turn the camera off just for a second so I can use my other hand. And I'll show you what it looks like when I'm all done. Okay, so at this point, our queen has been placed inside of the hive. I put her cage in between a couple of the frames. The little hole where the cork is and the candy plug would have been right there. I've made some space over here to dump the rest of the bees. So some of the bees will be dumped on her, the remainder will be dumped over here. It will take them a few days to eat their way through the candy plug, releasing their queen, and at that point, she'll check out her new hive, she'll hopefully start laying lots of eggs, and then as the season progresses, we'll add more and more layers to this hive, and it will slowly grow in height, like this one that's been up and running for a little bit longer. I'm going to give the bees one last tamp down. And away we go. Lots of bees. What I'm going to use as a lid is something called a hive top feeder. This will seal them in. It's somewhere for me to put some food for them until they actually start foraging on their own. I'm going to put these frames that I took out back in. My hive tool. I gently put the lid back on. There's a little bit of space between the lid and the bees. What I'm going to do next is pour some sugar and water syrup solution in here. This again is going to be their food until they get to know the area and until they start foraging on their own, bringing back their own nectar. Put the lid on the hive. Don't want to smush anybody. Careful. The few remaining bees that are in here will find their way back into the hive. So now, of course, there are lots of bees that have been displaced. They're flying around. But each queen gives off a unique scent called a pheromone, and these bees know that scent. So there'll be some bees at the entrance of the hive. They'll fan their wings, they'll spread that scent out into the air, and that'll bring in their sisters until they settle down and realize that this is their new home. Now that our bees are in their new home and getting used to the hive, after a few days they'll be ready to venture out and look for these early season bloomers. Things like crocus, forsythia, And early blooming trees like the red maple offer sources of nectar for our honeybees. So a sure way to know that it's springtime is when honeybees leave their hive to go out to collect pollen. Even though there's not a lot of flowers blooming this time of year, the bees are able to find it. They'll leave the hive when the temperature is above 55 degrees, which it is today. And this pollen that they're bringing back will get the hive up and running with new brood. If you look really close, you'll see on the back legs of the bees, you'll see the different color pollen that they're bringing in, and that represents different flowers that they're visiting. Even though it's March right now, these bees are working preparing for next winter. It will take them many months to produce the honey that they need to survive for the next cold spell that comes, probably in October or November. So now that our bees have been installed in the hive, we're going to leave them alone for about a week. We want them to get used to their new home, and we want to give them time to release their queen from that little individual cage that she was in. After a week, I'm going to go inside the hive, and I'm going to make sure that she has indeed been released from her cage. I'll remove that little cage that was in there, close the frames back up, and at that point, when the weather is good, the bees will go out and they'll start foraging for nectar and pollen on their own. I'll check on them from time to time just to make sure that they have enough syrup inside their feeder until they really start bringing in a lot of food. I hope you enjoyed watching.